Hello grade 2, I hope you are okay. Today we will talk about habitats again, but this time we will talk about hot and cold desert. The new vocabulary in this lesson are desert and Arctic. What is a hot desert? A hot desert is a dry habitat. The word habitat, as I told you before, means the place where plants and animals live. So a desert is a dry place or a dry habitat. And why this place or this habitat is dry? Because it gets very little rain. How it looks like? What is a hot desert like? A hot desert is hot or very hot during day and cool during night. And that's what makes the animals sleep during day and go hunting for food during night. The soil there is sandy and rocky. Some of the plants that live over there or grow over there are, for example, cactus and the grasses. And why these plants can grow in the hot desert? Because these plants don't need much water to grow. I think you have seen this before, the cactus plant. I think you saw it maybe at your house, at your school, when you go to the garden and so on, or when you go to buy some plants, you find it. This plant is very famous because if you forgot to water it someday, it's not going to die, it will stay alive. And why that? Because it doesn't need water every day. This plant can store water inside its body for a long time, it will not die. Desert plants can store water in their stems and leaves, and as you can see in the picture, if you touch the leaves of these plants, you will find that it's a little bit moist. You can feel the water inside it, because these plants store water in the leaves and in the stems. How these plants that grow in the desert get the water from the soil? How do they get water? I told you a desert is a dry habitat, so how it gets water? These plants have roots that spread out very far and very deep to get water. They are going to find any water in the soil, even if it's underground water, it's rainwater, any kind of water they will find. They are going to absorb it by the roots, give it to the plants in order to stay alive. How do plants protect themselves from the very, very strong sunlight in the desert or the very hot weather? The leaves of some plants curl up during the day. Do you remember the word evaporation? As I told you before, we took this in the water cycle lesson. Evaporation means that water is going to change from liquid to gas. And that's what happens in plants too. Plants store water inside their bodies, so they have water. So if the sun is very strong, it's very hot weather, the water inside their bodies is going to evaporate. That will lead to the death of the plant, and the plant doesn't want this to happen. The plant wants to stay alive, so the leaves of the plants curl up during the day to hide from the sunlight. Now let's talk about the animals that live in the hot desert. We have a lot of animals that live in the hot desert, but now I'm going to tell you some examples of the animals that live there. Tortoise, snake, and lizard. These animals can live there, but also we can see a lot more animals over there. Things that live in the desert need to survive without water, and I mean by the word things, the animals and the plants that live there. They have to survive without water because the desert, as I told you, is a dry habitat or a dry place that has no water, so they have to survive without water. So how animals can survive without water? They get the water or most of their water from eating the plants and the other animals that they can find in this habitat. And the plants, as I told you, they store water inside their bodies, so they don't get water from anywhere else. Now let's talk about the other type of desert, or the second type of desert, which is the Arctic. What is meant by the word Arctic? Arctic means cold desert. This desert, we can find it near the North Pole. Also, we have plants that live in the Arctic, as we have plants that live in the hot desert. But the Arctic plants grow close to the ground. And why do you think that the plants over there grow close to the ground? Because in the Arctic, we have a cold wind, very strong cold wind, and if these plants grow higher or taller, the wind can move them from one place to another. The stem can break down, they will get lost and they will die, of course. So these plants grow close to the ground to stay sheltered or to stay safe from the cold wind. Also, these plants have tiny leaves. Now let's talk about the roots of the plants that live in the Arctic. The roots over there, they are shallow. What's meant by the word shallow? Shallow means that these roots grow on the surface or near the surface. And why these roots don't grow down very deep and very far like the plants in the hot desert do? Because the water under the surface of the soil is frozen the whole year. And the function of the root is to get water from under the ground. So if the water is frozen, how these roots are going to get it? They can't get it even they go down. So the roots, they grow shallow in order to try to get water as much as they can. Now let's talk about the animals that live over there. The animals that live in the Arctic, we call them polar animals. Examples: Arctic foxes, reindeers, and polar bears. Of course, we have more, like the seal, like the penguin, but these are just examples. Polar bears and foxes grow thick fur to keep them warm. This is something God gave them to keep them warm. As you wear very thick coats during winter to keep yourself warm, God gave these animals something to keep them warm, which is the thick white fur. And we can see another function for this white fur, which is helping them to hide from the other enemies. It's very hard to find an animal, a white animal on a white snow. It's very hard, but if this animal or this bear is brown, it's very easy to find them on the snow, but it's hard to find this animal if its color is white and the snow is white too. And we have something else that help other animals to keep themselves warm in the Arctic, but now we will talk about the animals that don't have fur, like the seal. The seal doesn't have fur, but it has something else. And other animals like the seal, it have something else. It has a thick layer of fat under the skin, which is called blubber. This blubber helps this seal or the other animals like the seal to stay warm in such a cold weather. Now we finished the lesson. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the video.